Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to spend with us this afternoon. My name is Brandon Marie. I am the Director of Communications for the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association, and we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to turn things over to Rebecca Euler. She's our President and CEO. She will introduce our first speaker today, John Rigney, who will talk about the snow and ice removal law. So Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Okay, I apologize. I'm not able to turn on video. So I'm just going to talk here. But I wanted to say hello and welcome to our webinar on winter weather issues for the trucking industry here in Pennsylvania this year. Though it seems that we've had an unseasonably warm couple of weeks, I'm looking out the window and there's a beautiful sun out there today. We know it's only a matter of time before we're going to need to turn on the defrost to get out our scrapers, with plow trucks not far behind. So thank you for joining us today. We are fortunate to have with us for the next hour Dan Whetzel, who is the Acting Division Chief of the Maintenance Technical Leadership Division at PennDOT. Dan joined us for this webinar last year, which was very informative. So we're glad to have him back again this year to provide an overview of PennDOT's plans for winter travel restrictions this year. Also to highlight a few changes that were made to the program this year and to answer our questions. We also have PMTA's Director of Safety, John Rigney, who's here to start things off with us today. Pennsylvania passed a new law this year that requires the removal of snow and ice from vehicles and also provides for penalties for snow and ice on vehicles. But it also has some exceptions. So John's going to explain the new requirements and the exceptions on the new snow and ice law. We are happy to provide this free webinar, not just to PMTA members today, but to the trucking community at large, because safety on the roads is PMTA's highest priority. So thank you to our members who are on the webinar today, because your membership allows us to provide programs like this and many others. For attendees who aren't members of PMTA, please consider joining us to be part of an association whose mission is to work every day to promote the professional and economic growth of our industry through programs like this and many others. So we're pleased to do that today by discussing what to expect this coming winter. So first, just a few logistical issues. We are recording this webinar so that it's accessible on our member website throughout the winter. If anybody needs, has some questions and wants to go back and view the webinar again, it will be available. And in addition, we are going to have time for questions at the end of the presentations. So feel free to type them in the Q&A box. We'll save them for the end. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to John Rigney, PMTA's Director of Safety, who's going to discuss the new snow and ice removal law. Go ahead, John.
Good morning. For those of you who like to have access to the print version directly in front of you, the old section you find in Title 75, which is the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code, Section 3720, and that title was snow and ice dislodged or falling from a moving vehicle, and that was repealed. And the new section is Pennsylvania Vehicle Code Section 3721, titled Snow and Ice. Now, under Section A, for removal of snow and ice from a motor vehicle or motor carrier vehicle, they include the passenger vehicles now as well as the commercial vehicles. So initially, when a vehicle's been outside, stored outside, say you have a semi-trailer parked at a vendor that's being loaded, upon cessation of the snow, you have 24 hours to remove that snow and ice from the vehicle so it doesn't cause any issues on the highway. The exception to the rule is if you can prove that you are en route to a location to have that snow or ice removed, then you should not receive any prosecution for that. And you find that within this section here. The violation, if you fail to take care of this, is $50 for each offense, regardless of whether any snow or ice falls from the vehicle. The second section, section B, dislodged or fallen snow or ice, it carries a pretty substantial penalty if there's death, serious bodily injury, or damage to any of the vehicles from snow or ice that falls from a vehicle on the highway, and it's not less than $200 or more than $1,500 for each offense. So at least now they give you an opportunity to get the snow and ice removed before you receive a citation. Unfortunately, if there's any injuries or serious bodily injury or death that's caused by it, I'm not so sure that one would help. It's probably best to try to make arrangements to have that taken care of before you leave the facility. I know most of the facilities now have ice scrapers, snow scrapers, and I think there's even some grants available statewide to equip your facilities with that type of equipment. So that's the way it looks now. It's 3721 is the new section in Title 75 Vehicle Code. If you want to get your books out and take a look at that for yourself.
All right, we will take a few minutes. If there are any questions right now about the snow and ice law, go ahead and type those into the question and answer box or the chat box. And we'll take just a minute to do some questions on that. We will provide these slides with this text.
The one positive about this new section is it's not just commercial vehicles, it's all vehicles. So if you have your SUV parked outside and get a significant amount of snow or ice, it's behoove you to remove that before you leave your driveway.
All right, well, if there are no questions, I will stop my sharing of the screen here and pass things over to Dan, who I believe has joined us now.
I am on. Can everyone hear me okay?
We do. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, excellent. I am sorry I am late. I thought we were at 12:30, but I was prepared and ready to go. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Whetzel. I'm with PennDOT Central Office, and I'm going to go over our vehicle restrictions with you and what we have here in Pennsylvania. I know that's kind of a touchy subject at times, and I understand that, but working with Rebecca and folks at PMTA, we have been able to continue to work with the industry and making some changes and adaptations to try to help you guys continue moving. We find the restrictions are needed during major snow events and ice events throughout the winter to try to keep the interstates open. But hearing your concerns and things like that, we have adapted some. So if you remember back in a few years ago, we were putting the restrictions on 2 hours before a storm even hit, and we had dry roads still. And we heard you loud and clear that, hey, that was ridiculous. And our thought process at that time was, we might promote you to go a different direction or something, and ideas like that. But we heard you guys say loud and clear that, hey, we're going to run up to the point you tell us to stop. So we adapted to that and changed our method of we're gonna start putting these on when the storm warrants it, and we're gonna lift them as soon as the storm warrants it. So now we're to the point of we are looking at putting these on for when the conditions are the worst. So when we see 2-inch per hour snow rates, things like that are warranting, hey, we need to really look at putting these on. But when those 2-inch per hour snow rates are out, then we're really pressing on our districts and our snow removal teams to say, hey, we're looking at putting commercial vehicles back out here. Yes, the roads aren't bare, but we're ready to put them back on and let you folks run again. So we have been working with you, and we will continue to work with you. So make sure you're letting Rebecca know any concerns you have with that, because then we work through her and her team to try to adapt some things. So what I have on the screen here for you, and you can find these items on 501. I'll show you where to find those here later on. This is our infographic that shows the commercial vehicle restriction and what tiers we have. As you can see, there is a slight change from last year. Last year we had our empty box trucks or straight trucks you'd have. We treated all box trucks and straight trucks the same, whether they were empty, loaded, no matter what. We have now let them be treated as a loaded or empty. They will be classified as what you are. So if you're empty, obviously you're going to be off at tier 1 and the rest of the tiers. But if you're a loaded straight truck or box truck, you are permitted to run just like any other loaded commercial vehicle. Same way with the chains. So if you have alternative traction control devices, such as chains or cables, things like that on board, then you would be permitted to run in tier 3 with the rest of the loaded commercial vehicles. So that was something we saw as we can let that happen. And that's the only change that we had from last year. So if you're familiar with last year's ban framework, that's going to be the same as this year, just with the exception of the loaded box or straight truck is now considered loaded. It's not just classified as empty. So we did have a caveat there that lets those folks run a little longer here. So now looking at the actual ban framework here, if you're not familiar with it, we'll go through it briefly here and just kind of give you an overview of it. Again, this document also can be found on 501pa.com, and I'll show you where to find that here in momentarily. So that's all open to the public. You can view these items anytime you'd like. So as we go through the 501pa, the ban framework here, if it'll load. Looks like I'm going to show you where it is on the website right now because that doesn't want to load. So if we go to 501pa.com here, over on the left side, you'll see vehicle restriction information. If you go over to the vehicle restriction information, here's your definition of the infographic. So you'll be able to click it and see that infographic I just shared. That's available to you at any time on this website. It also brings up about the 45 miles an hour speed limit restrictions. We are going to continue the trucks right lane only during the commercial vehicle restrictions and the 45 mile an hour speed limit restriction. So if there's 45 mile an hour speed limit restriction, commercial vehicles are required to remain in the right lane only. The travel ban framework, as stated, it is in there, so you can view it. That's where it goes into the details of what's expected and what's happening. So as we scroll through this, I'm going to go down into, here's the background on where we came to this. So if folks want to read through it, it's developed between PennDOT, the Pennsylvania State Police, the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, and the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. We all four work together on developing this product, and then we also review it yearly. So in August, that is when we reviewed the changes and proposed the changes and implemented them for this year. So if you do have concerns or suggestions for changes, please get with Rebecca before August, because typically it's in August where all four of the agencies get together to discuss this. It kind of lines out what each role is for each agency's responsibility. So this is it goes through PEMAs, PSPs, PennDOTs, as well as the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. So the decision making and timeline, how we come to putting these restrictions on, we get a weather notification from, we have a contracted weather service through AccuWeather. They notify us a few hours and a few days in advance, letting us know, hey, there's a major storm coming. Typically it's 2 to 3 days in advance. As soon as we get solid information that this storm is going to be impactful, we'll develop a draft travel restriction plan of, hey, this is what the plan is going to be. We share that with PMTA and say, hey, this is what the plan is. This is what we're looking at. As the storm keeps getting closer, we try to narrow down the timing of when it's going to happen. And then up to the point in time of, typically we try to give notification 24 hours in advance that this is what the final plan is. But we realize that we need to be flexible as well. So if
Hey,
we
Dan,
yeah,
I hate to interrupt, but the only thing we see on the screen right now is a blank white page. Are you trying to share something else?
Yeah, it's showing on my side here. Oh, let me see here. Let me stop sharing and then share again.
Okay.
How about now? Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So what we do is we try to give notification at least 24 hours in advance to show folks, hey, this is where the restrictions are planned. But as I mentioned earlier, we are storm dependent now at this point. So if the storm shows up 2 hours early, the restrictions would go on 2 hours early. If the storm is 4 hours late, the restrictions would be pushed back 4 hours, et cetera. So or if we see changing conditions that we say, hey, we're not going to go to a tier 4, we're just going to do a tier 2 or maybe no tiers. We've done that last winter as well. So there's different things that we are moving along with. And I'll go back through, since that screen was white, I'll show you guys where to get this information at on 511 at the conclusion of this. We then look through the post-storm. We look at did the restrictions actually work during this event? What closures did we have? What were causes of closures? What were causes of any restrictions? Items like that. Plus, we look at even our secondary roads. So the detours that if folks can continue to travel on the secondary routes or the detour routes of the interstates, what were issues we had on those routes as well? We don't only just look at data from that. We reach out to the districts or the counties that were involved with those areas and get their feedback as well. So we get a good feedback from the folks in the field seeing what's happening, so we can better adjust for the next storm if needed. This covers the next line, starts going through the restrictions. It starts out with the speed and right lane only restrictions, tells you what's going on there and when they're implemented. With the speed limit restrictions this year, a few of you might have seen last year that we had some digital speed limit signs up on Interstate 80 in Clearfield County. We saw great data from that of when we didn't have those out there, we were having three closures every event. Once we deployed those and put them out on that interstate, we had multiple events that had 0 closures. And we saw speed data drop because folks were actually adhering to those speed limits better than they were when they were just on those digital message boards. We actually removed them in March, and we had a storm a week after we removed them, and we had 3 more closures in that one event. So it really gave us some good data of they actually did work. We saw good speed data showing that folks were adhering to it better because it was an actual speed limit sign. We decided to expand this pilot now. So you're going to see those up on Interstate 80 in Clearfield County. You'll see them on the East Bridges in Jefferson County, and you'll see them on the Emlenton Bridge in Venango, Butler County area there on Interstate 80. You'll also see them on Interstate 81 from Interstate 78 up to Interstate 80 through that whole section. So we're hoping to see some good information there, some good data come back. And I wouldn't be surprised that if we see good data from this, you might see digital speed limit signs on interstates more frequently. What this will do with the speed limit, the digital speed limits there, not only will 45s be utilized on them, but you'll also see if there's heavy fog or heavy rains coming in, the traffic management centers will be monitoring speed conditions, and if they see speed limits that we need to drop them some, then they may lower them to 55 mile an hour. If the speed limit is dropped to 55 miles per hour, you do not need to follow the commercial vehicle right lane only law. You only need to follow the commercial vehicle right lane only at 45 mile an hour restrictions. So 55, you can utilize both, or in some cases, all 3 lanes. It continues on into the vehicle restrictions and the definitions. So it tells you, hey, a tier 1 is that unloaded or lightly loaded commercial vehicle. And then the passenger vehicles, pulling trailers, tractor trailers without trailers. Tractors without trailers, etc. We define a unloaded vehicle is a vehicle carrying under a third of its cargo weight. So if you are permitted to carry 9,000 pounds of cargo and you have less than 3,000 pounds of cargo on, then you are considered empty per PSP. So the state police will cite folks if they are less than 2,999 pounds or less, is what they would look at. And that's just an example. If you can carry 9,000, you need to be carrying at least 3,000 pounds or more to be considered loaded at that point. It continues into your tier 2. What that means, it kicks off the loaded double trailers. They call them tandem trailers. I couldn't get it through the whole group of the folks in the field, my parents, everyone. When I grew up plowing snow and stuff, we called them doubles. They're doubles, but in this document, they're called tandem trailers. So your loaded double stuff, they are out, but that's without chains. We give the caveat that they can continue on if they have chains. Now in tier 3, we kicked them off altogether. So whether you have chains or not, we did kick you guys out of there, but we wanted to give you opportunities because we do try to go with a tier 1, 2 most times, but there are times that we are going up to 4s and things like that if we're seeing severe impacts. But we keep trying different things to try to help push that you guys can keep moving. Tier 3 is where we get into those commercial vehicles that you have to carry alternative traction control devices. And again, that's carrying them. They just have to be in the truck with you, hanging on the trailer, hanging on the bulkhead, wherever you need to hang them is where you have to have them. You do not have to have them on the tires. The only time you need to put them on the tires is if you became stuck behind let's say you came up upon a crash and now you can't climb the hill because it's been snowing and you've been stuck for 4 hours. The point here is that we can you can put these chains on, climb the hill, pull off the side of the road at the next exit or a safe area, remove them, and then continue on your way. We had issues in the past where we would have a closure and a wrecker would have to come down and pull one truck at a time up over the hill. And that's why we worked with the industry here. And this was one of the alternatives that was asked that we could do this. So we implemented that into the ban framework as well, as to give a caveat instead of just saying, oh, you're just off the road, but we don't want to do that. And then tier 4 removes all commercial vehicles, whether you're loaded, empty, chains, anything. That's all commercial vehicles. Tier 4, all commercial vehicles are out. And then tier 5 is all passenger vehicles. The only vehicles permitted in a tier 5 are emergency vehicles at that point. There are some exemptions, and you can go through them. They're listed there. So electric utility restoration crews, items like that, gas utility, water, telecommunications, emergency services, etc. They're listed in that ban framework as well, that you'd be able to go through and see that also. I want to get down into let me find it here. This is some reasons why we do the ban. So that was one of the questions is, well, what's making your decision? So you can look through and see, hey, this is what we're looking at. So you can start projecting, okay, hey, they're calling for a major snowstorm from 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. on a busy day on the highways. You guys know when the busy days are on the roads. Then we can look at, you can probably bet that it's going to be a restriction at that point. So that's when we're looking at what's going on and items like that. Back to that planning timeline, it shows you that through the restriction framework. And then here's some questions on who was exempt. It kind of draws that out for you, who was exempt to continue moving forward. And then here's the tire chain and alternate traction control devices answers and questions. So again, they don't have to be installed. You just have to carry them and they have to be available, ready to go. They need to be, chains must be applied to tires on the opposite ends of the same drive axle. So you're only looking at doing one drive axle. You don't have to have chains for all your tires. You just need to have chains for one drive axle is what we're looking at. and on each side. So typically it's just 2 sets of chains for your trucks to be able to continue on. And I say chains, but alternative traction control devices are approved. So wheel sanders and different driven chains as well. And then the buses had some different chains or some kind of webbing that we did permit because of the low clearance and items like that on motor coaches. But again, you'll be able to find this all on the 501. So if we go into 501 here, so you go into 501 and you get the vehicle restriction information on the side here. Once you go in, you'll have the infographic here and the van framework here. You can also sign up for vehicle restriction alerts. So you can go into here, enter your email or phone number, whichever one you would like to go with. We can do text alerts or email alerts. Once you're in, you can select what roadways you're looking at. So if you primarily drive 81 and 78, you can select I-81 and I-78 that you want to know when there's speed limit restrictions on there and you want to know when there's commercial vehicle restrictions on there. It will also notify you when they're lifted. So they do put that out when they're lifted as well. So it is a very good tool for that. Plus through our 501, you can see where our plow trucks have been and where any crashes are happening at that point in time. When we do have planned restrictions or when there are restrictions in place, over on the left side here where we found the vehicle restrictions, there will be another tab added and it will flash red that will say there's vehicle restrictions planned, and you can click that and it will show you the map of where they're located. Plus it will give you a text list of where they're located, where the planned locations are. Once they're activated, it will do the same thing. It will show you where the active restrictions are at, and it will tell you in a text list where the active restrictions are at. Also, when you're on the regular map, it will show up on the regular map where the vehicle restrictions are at. But the map on the left, once it's activated for vehicle restrictions, is much easier to see and navigate and see what's happening. With that, I can open the floor up to any questions you may have, if that's okay with you, Rebecca.
Yeah, we do have a list of questions here for you, Dan, but I did want to note, I'm glad you showed the 511 PA website. It is a very nice website. I mean, you all can see there's quite a few tools there that you can use. And like you said, signing up for the alerts, I think is very helpful too. So our members know we do, as soon as PennDOT alerts us of a coming restriction, we do send that out to our membership through email and social media. But the first thing we do is put the link to 511pa.com. So we'll notify you that there are restrictions coming, but then we'll immediately tell you to check 511PA in order to see the latest updates, because you're always going to find the most accurate, up-to-date information on the the 511PA website. So we will alert members, but we're going to point you to this website because it is the most accurate and up-to-date. So thank you. Brandon, do you want to take us through some of the questions here that we've gotten?
Sure. Sorry, I was on mute there. Looks like the first couple of questions we had were actually about snow and ice. So we'll skip those. We'll come back to those after we take questions for Dan. So question here from Dale Knox. He says they have what they call dig out chains on all their trucks. Do those count?
We'd have to look into that. I'm not familiar with what the dig out chains are. It's if you can give me some information on that, then we could definitely look into that and see if we could get that listed on the approved devices. At this time, we were just looking at chains and cables is what we kind of went with approved traction control devices. So if you can give me some information on that, we would definitely evaluate it and then get information back.
I don't. Wait. Dale, are you still with us? I'm going to allow you to talk. Dale, if you're there.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. thanks, Dan, for being on here and giving us this information. One thing is, you're talking about if your semi gets stuck on ice, and you're requiring full chains. The one thing that you can't do is put a set of chains on once you're stuck. And all of my units has got what we call dig out chains. And you put them on, they're about a foot wide. You put them on and you ratchet strap them to the wheel. And you can put 2 or 4 on there on one side, on the passenger side. I instruct my driver to do it on the passenger side. And what those are designed for, if you get stuck in the snow and ice, those would dig you out of that snow and ice until you get up to a safe space. And those can be put on in 3 minutes. And I don't allow my drivers to do it on the driver's side because I don't want them to be over there on slick roads on the driver's side, being able to get hit. So I always inform them to put them on the passenger side, and that digs them right out and gets them right up the hill. So those are the ones that we use that I think is, in my opinion, is a whole lot better than full chains, because full chains, you got to put them on while you're able to move the vehicle.
Yeah, I agree, Dale, 100% there. So if you can get Brandon and Rebecca some information on like where you got them from, just so I can research them. I can get with PSP and PMA and the Turnpike. I do agree with you 100%. I like I said, I used to plow snow. I had to put tire chains on myself, and you do have to be able to move somewhat to be able to put tire chains on properly. And as far as your option of just putting them on the passenger side, I agree with you. Safety's our utmost thing. That's why we're doing this as well. So you instructing your drivers just to put them on the passenger side. If that works and they get up out of the hill, out of the way, that's great. That's perfect. That's all you need to do. But have that ability to mount both sides if needed. So make sure you're carrying the 2 sets if you need them. But if you only need to set them up on one side to get out of the jam, no PSP, PennDOT, no one's going to complain that, hey, you put your chains on and you're supposed to put both sides on. Well, we put them on the passenger side and they work just fine. It got you up out of the jam. So no one's going to complain about that. So no, I appreciate you sharing that information, because we would like to maybe introduce that even as an option.
Okay. Yeah, I will get with Rebecca and give you the information on that.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. All right. Got a couple of questions about what is considered loaded and not empty. Gordon says, is there a weight limit that would be considered not empty? Sometimes we pick up supplies and maybe are only a quarter full. And then Ryan said, can you clarify what is considered loaded? He says he thought he saw that 1/3 of the GVW, and they will have loaded trucks and pallet count, but under that 1/3 GVW, does that prohibit them from driving as loaded? So maybe just some clarification on what that cutoff is.
Yeah, so our definition of loaded is you have to be hauling 1/3 of your gross vehicle weight rating, or higher. So if you're below that 1/3, then you are considered empty at that point in time. And I know that state police have already caught a couple people that, because their vehicle alone and the trailer alone is 1/3 of its vehicle gross vehicle weight rating. So they threw a pallet jack in with a pallet, and PSP cited them for it because you weren't carrying 1/3 of your load. So what they're looking at, and they need to define this definition a little better, and that's a work in progress, is it's 1/3 of your vehicle weight that you're permitted to carry. So I gave that example of, if you are permitted to have 9,000 pounds of cargo in the trailer, you need to have at least 3,000 pounds of cargo in the trailer to have a third of your gross vehicle weight rate, the gross vehicle, what you can haul. So if you have 2,999 pounds and they run you across the scales, then they're gonna mark you as empty at that point in time. So it's getting that definition of what you're permitted to carry. So it's a third of what you're permitted to haul. And again,
Okay.
that definition's on the bottom of the infographic here that you see. And then in the band framework, let me scroll up here. Sorry if I make anyone dizzy. When you come into the definition of a unloaded commercial vehicle is, it's in here as well. Those are your exemptions. It's under the tier 1 is where you start falling into it. But it's on the bottom of that infographic where you can find it the quickest of what the definition is.
All right. I've got another question here. Why are loaded tandems with chains not permitted to run during tier 2, like all of the other commercial motor vehicles?
So loaded tandem trailers are permitted to run in tier 2 as long as they have alternative traction control devices. That was a caveat that we had that we actually added. If you remember when we first started these tiers, we classified empties and loaded double trucks out in tier 1. We found that we have more issues with double trailers than anything else when we have major snow events. I think it's just the multiple pivot points, and that's some of the issues we had. So working with the industry helped us in coming up with letting us go with the chains on board and letting you run in tier 2 at least. So we did move it so that you can run to tier 2 with chains on board, but then we do throw you out at tier 3. That's kind of where that came from in the back, and it looks like I believe that the reason for it is the multiple pivot points and just the complexity if a double truck is involved in a wreck or in the backlog of the wreck and needs help out. It's just more complex in getting those folks out.
Great, thanks, Dan. Heather asked if this document is available on the internet, and I believe that you can see there the links at the top of the page. So this document is available at 511pa.com/travel conditions/definitions.aspx, but you can access that through 511pa. And then that the longer PDF that you're going through looks like it's also available at 511pa.com /PDFs/travel restriction and ban framework October 2022.pdf. We will share those. I will include those links in an email when we follow up afterwards. So another question here from Katie Murphy. She says, what are your triggers for ice when restrictions may begin? She says she doesn't see anything in the document about ice.
So ice is very touchy. We're going to be looking at freezing rain on previously untreated untreated roads. So if we know there's going to be freezing rain coming in, let's say right now, we all know that PennDOT has not been out salting roads in the past couple weeks here. Some in the Northwest got some snow, but no one else did. So if we saw some freezing rain coming in here, let's say Thanksgiving, that's going to trigger us a little more to be more proactive in putting restrictions on, because we know we don't have any salt down on any of the roads at this point in time. So there's no residue. We can go out and pre-treat the roads. We do put salt brine down, but we can only do so much, and it only lasts so long. And that only gives us a opportunity that the snow and ice doesn't bond to the road as quickly. So if we're looking at greater than 1/10 of an inch of ice on the roadways, that's gonna be one of the triggers that we start looking at. Hey, that there's a potential for some commercial vehicle restrictions. Ice is one of our biggest downsides. Snow does not scare us nearly as much as ice does, and I'm sure that's the way most of the trucking industry is as well, because a lot of folks don't see the ice bonding to the road. They see snow bonding to the road and can start slowing down, but when the ice is bonding to the road, you don't see it. It just looks like a wet road, and we see more accidents that way. So that's one of the reasons you'll see kind of stricter truck restrictions with heavier ice events.
Great. Another question here from Stephen Beck. Are there any exceptions for local drivers where conditions changed and they are trying to return to their terminal?
So we have a list of already approved exemptions, but there at this point there is no local exemptions. We don't. We try to lift these as the storm progresses out. So when we're seeing those conditions changing on those highways where you're at, we do try to lift them. Now, when we lift them, we are doing it at a corridor approach. So I'm going to use Interstate 80 as an example again. When we're doing Interstate 80, we're going to restrict from Ohio to 79 at a minimal. We're going to restrict from 79 to I-99 at a minimal, and then from 99 to 81. We try to go interstate to interstate. That way, if you do want to go north and south to try to go down, and we have been working with the turnpike and folks like that to try to keep one of the east to west and one of the north to south routes open. So if you do have to go around, yeah, it's going to be a couple hour detour, but you would be able to ride on one of the highways at that point. We do not restrict anything outside of interstates except for US 22 and PA 33 in the Allentown area. Other than that, it's just on interstates is the only thing we look at putting commercial vehicle restrictions on. So that does give you the caveat that you can run roads off the interstate. And we get this a lot of times of, well, it's more dangerous and items like that. And we do understand that. But if we have a wreck on a secondary road, folks can turn around and go get help if they need to seek shelter, if they need to go back a different direction, where once they're on a limited access highway and they're trapped out there, we've had bad items happen with people with medical emergencies and different things like that in our trapped areas.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Alex sent us an example of the emergency tire change. Thank you, Alex. I will pass those along to Rebecca and Dan so we can continue that conversation. I had another question here from Jason Armstrong. Is a single 28-foot pup considered the same as a van?
Jason, I have to get a definition. You're saying a pup trailer, like it hooks at a pintle hook, correct?
If Jason's still here with us.
As long as it hooks at a pintle hook or into a fifth wheel, it would be considered one of these. It would be considered a tractor trailer, no matter the length of the trailer. So it could be a 20-foot van, it could be a 15-foot, whatever. As long as it's a trailer and it's in a commercial vehicle, and an easy way of saying it, as long as it twists and turns in the middle, that would be considered a trailer. The straight truck would be your loaded box truck, empty box trucks.
Does that answer your question, Jason? I think we just gave you access to speak. Okay, maybe not. All right.
And Brandon, if that didn't, feel free to email me and I can help you out afterwards even.
Will do for sure. If anyone has any questions that we don't get to today, please feel free to email me and we'll pass those along to Dan as well.
I have a couple.
Before we do that, John, I'm glad you piped in because we did get a question from Nick. Nick says, what is stopping a motorist from falsely reporting snow and ice falling from a truck trailer? Does the officer, in order to ticket or fine, have to personally witness snow and ice coming off?
That's a good question. The last company I worked for, we got a lot of erroneous complaints. They have to be able to, in order to prosecute you. I can tell you from my former life, they have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt that it was your vehicle that caused the damage. And it's hard. I mean, people get erroneous complaints like that all the time. It'd be an individual basis on whether they were able to put your vehicle there at the time and prove that it was your vehicle. It's a difficult situation. Bad answer, but it's not a question that you can just give you a concrete answer on. People are going to be dishonest and try to get money out of you any way they can. If you can prove that you were doing the right thing, that's the most important thing. Like I put in an answer to one of the other questions was, if you're in a situation where you have a truck in a place that you need to get the snow and ice removed, there are companies that'll come out and remove it for you. Or if you find a company and make an appointment and can prove that you had an appointment while you were en route to there and get stopped, that would be the ticket. You want to cover yourself as much as you can to show that you were trying to comply with the rule. I had some questions for Dan though.
Sure. I had one more from an anonymous attendee here. It says, what if we cannot get to a snow scraper to clear the trailer roof?
Well, that's where everybody can Google stuff on their smartphone or even in their tablet on the ELD to find a place that would be able to do it for them. And if you could show that you had an appointment to get there, now I'm not talking 100 miles away, I'm talking something local to their location. Sometimes the service will come out to you. I know I had, like I said, the last company we had contracted in regional areas for just this thing, where they'd come out and have a snow blower and run it across the top of the truck. But the last thing they want is drivers climbing on the roof of the truck to do it, because I'm sure that the OSHA regulations would have something to say about that. So you don't want to put yourself in a dangerous situation to mitigate it. That's why these companies have the equipment to do it.
Great. Go ahead, John, with your questions for Dan.
So just a few things, Dan. Did you give any thought to allowing some of the empties to run while they're equipped with chains?
There was discussion on that. It didn't seem as all the agencies were on board with that. We can definitely bring that up again. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything that will not be implemented this year, for sure. But it's definitely something we can bring up and evaluate. And honestly, in my opinion, it's worth a try. And my reason for saying that is I'm in favor of trying different things and letting it go. And then if it doesn't work, if it fails multiple times and we see that this isn't going to work, then that's when we say, listen, we're going back to the old way. We can remove it at that point in time. So I'll bring it up to the other agencies and we'll discuss it, because we do, when we are activated, we talk about different things like this. So and then we really do a deep dive come the summer. So we'll add that into a talking point and see if that's an idea. But I know that the multiple agencies were very hesitant on that, doing that, and their thought was they're worried that the empties would just be they're easier to lose control under the snow and ice. They don't have the weight to just keep them moving, and definitely if they get hung up on a hill due to a crash in front of them, and that snow had built up, they're guaranteed they're going to have to put the chains on, pretty much. Where a lot of your loaded ones, they have enough weight that they can get moving on their own power sometimes. So, but something we can look at for sure.
All righty, so yeah, and some of the exceptions here, you have fuel delivery, salt, and you know, the, whatever they put that stuff down, the
The salt brine.
traction material down. So what happens when you go and you deliver your fuel or you deliver your salt and then you're empty? You know, obviously you don't want to create a truck stop at the locations where, you know, these people are making their deliveries. Is there anything where they can return to their company empty after doing that?
I don't want to mislead you here. I'm going to have to ask state police on that. My thought is that if they are actively delivering salt, they're delivering fuel or whatever that was, say it was a fuel emergency and they were permitted to continue running. I would say they would be allowed to return. Like if you delivered oxygen to a hospital, you drop the oxygen off, then I would think we'd permit you to return. But I will get with PSP and we'll get a definite answer on that, because I don't want to mislead anyone here.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I'm asked that question a lot, and they, you know, you have a fuel truck that can haul 8,000 gallons of fuel. You don't want to return with 2,500 gallons and run around with that fuel all the time.
Yeah, I agree.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. So
yeah, common sense tells me that we would permit them to do that, but we know how that can go sometimes. Yes, 100%.
You gotta be careful with common sense.
100%.
The other thing, I did have this question specifically. You have a load of perishable, say, groceries or something, maybe lettuce or tomatoes or something that's being transported. Obviously, if you don't get it off the highway to a place where it can be offloaded, it's going to spoil and be you know, compost somewhere. Would a tow truck be permitted to go out and retrieve that perishable load without having any issues?
A tow truck would be able to, as they're under the exempt.
Okay, good.
So tow
Very
trucks
good.
are exempt under the commercial vehicle recovery.
I just
but
wanted to make sure.
As long as that vehicle is stuck out on the interstate or on the highway, then they're permitted to go out and get them.
Yeah,
But
I mean, sometimes a truck will have the fuel gel up or something, and they they can't get going, and the last thing you want to do is destroy food stuff.
Yeah, if they're disabled, then the tow truck would be able to get them and move them at that point.
I think that's all I have. Thanks.
We had one other question come in about if there was a listing of snow removal companies. I'm not sure that we have one of those. I know of a few suppliers. It would be awesome if there was a dot there on the 511 map to show us where we could get our snow removed, but I don't think that exists either. Any thoughts on
I think
that?
a lot of towing services do it, Brandon, in the bad weather season.
That's good to know. One other question that just came in from R.E. Weaver. We deliver pharmaceuticals to drugstores. Can they operate and return?
I don't believe they're considered exempt. We do take on exemptions case by case at times, such as, let's say, delivery of oxygen to a hospital. I'm going to use that one again because that was used once. But I do warn everyone on the call that if you are requesting an exemption because, let's say, pharmaceuticals, and you're saying I'm delivering Tylenol to a pharmacy or to a hospital because they're in desperate need of it, we do verify what the need is. So we actually had a company request they had an oxygen delivery to a hospital. They said the hospital was running out of oxygen, and so on. We reached out to the hospital. They said they had at least 1 to 2 weeks worth of oxygen on hand. So we denied that exemption at that point in time. So we do verify, is there a true need for that? Because we are trying to lift these restrictions as soon as we can. The longest restrictions we typically have are 6 to 12 hours. But when we don't have these restrictions in place, we have evidence that shows that we have interstate closures for 18 to 24 hours when we don't have these in place. So we are trying to get you moving as soon as we can. But if you do feel as if you're not listed on the exemptions already that are here, you can go through your local EMA. So you would call your local emergency management agency on their non-emergency number and try to get an exemption that way, is how it goes through.
Okay. Well, we're coming up on the hour mark, and out of respect for everyone's time, we'll cut it off there in terms of questions. Like I said, if you have any other ones, please feel free to email me or anyone here at PMTA headquarters. Our email addresses are always our first initial and then our last name at pmta.org. Many of you already know that. Of course, you can also email info@pmta.org. Those will come to usually me or someone else here in the office. We're always happy to take all of your questions, and we'll do our best to track down an answer for you. We appreciate the time that Dan has spent with us today and answering some questions. We know that we put you on the spot here. We did it last year, and we appreciate you coming back to answer more questions again this year, Dan. We're very grateful for your time and for the work that PennDOT does to try and keep our roadways safe throughout the winter.
It was my pleasure, and thank you all for the questions as well.
All
I
right.
think we have some, real quick, I think we have some follow-up information to share back to the group. And also some follow-ups with PennDOT. So we'll be back in touch. And again, thank you, Dan, for joining us, and thank you for being willing to accept feedback from the industry and from our members, and we'll continue to work with you. So anybody on the line here who has feedback for us to share with Dan and his team, please let us know.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.